Thank you for joining me for this episode of God Talk. And in this episode of God Talk, my question to you is, do you want to become a better person? I hope so. I hope we all do, because if we're not becoming better, then we are being stagnant in who we are as people. And if you're not growing, you are dying. The Bible's filled with stories of people that are developing their character and becoming better people. We can see it in the disciples. The disciples, as Jesus called them and followed them in ministry, are continually growing in their faith in God and their courage to boldly speak up and stand for what they believe in. They become better people in terms of being obedient to God and following God, even to the point of being willing to die. We look at Abraham and you see the growth and the progression in Abraham from when God calls him out of his homeland and he's willing to follow the promise of a child even when he is 100 years old and beyond the time in which he and his wife even can have children, even though she's barren. Yet he learned to trust God in that, all the way up to the point of being willing to sacrifice his own son, Isaac. And so we see that growth in his development as well. And so I could keep going. They're like Paul and the growth and development in him. I mean, really anyone who's a follower of Christ ought to be growing and developing who they are and their character. So I think all of us in here innately do want to become better people. And this podcast is going to address some of the things that we can do, practical steps and tips for how we can become better people and ultimately better Christians and better children of God. Now, number one, it all starts with, are you willing to change? Because if you're not willing to change, you can't become a better person. I mean, if we want to become a better person, but we're not willing to change, then you will not become a better person. So if you're listening to this podcast because you saw the title and you thought, you know what? I want to hear what he has to say. I want to become a better person. But then you're not willing to change. Well, then turn the podcast off because becoming better doesn't happen unless change takes place. And for a lot of us, change isn't always easy. You can't, as the saying goes, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I think the older that we get, the more stuck in the ways that we become. And it's kind of interesting. I see that like two different types of people as they get older. The people that become more rigid and more stuck in their ways. But I think then there's a group of people who tend to become better people. They're not as uptight. They become more personable, more caring, maybe not so rushed in the things that they do, and they just become more forgiving. They just become genuinely better people. So step number one, if you want to become a better person, you have to be willing to change. And maybe like you should list out different things that you want to change about yourself so that you can be intentional about making sure that you are changing in those areas that perhaps you are the weakest. Second thing that you got to do is you got to be willing to stop making excuses. Do you know people like this that like anytime something goes wrong, they have excuses for it? Like things that were beyond their control or things that were other people's fault, and that so and so didn't do what they were supposed to do, and that's why that happened. That's I was late for work because my kid didn't fill up my car with gas, or there was a big accident on the freeway. Like people won't own it and say, you know what, I should have left earlier, right? And I can tell you as a boss of several employees, as I address different things that don't happen the way that it was my desire for them to happen. When I bring up those problems, I'm not looking for a bunch of excuses. I mean, sometimes there are going to be things that are beyond your control, but like I'm looking for my employees to say, you know what? I screwed that up. Like I should have done better. I could have done better. If I had handled it this way or that way, it would have been better. That's on me. I own it. It's not going to happen again. I love having employees like that, but far too often you just hear a bunch of excuses. Well, if you're just making excuses for yourself, then you're going to have a lot of reasons why you can't change and why you can't become a better person. Maybe you're too busy. Maybe life has been really difficult. You know what I'm saying? Like all these different things are going to come up and you're just going to make excuses and you will not make positive improvement in your life until you learn to stop making excuses. So I encourage you, like, if you want to change, even if there are things that are beyond your control, there are some things in that you could have controlled and you can at least own that. And, and you have to be willing to stop making excuses. And honestly, along with stopping making excuses, you actually have to be willing to admit fault, to be able to say, "I'm sorry." We talked about that in Bible class yesterday. That very, I don't know, very few people. It seems I can't assign a percentage to it, but very few people will apologize. Something innately that scares us, and thinking that like we would take responsibility for something because we don't want the consequences that come from it. So we won't say that I'm sorry. We won't say it to our spouse. We won't say it to our kids. Our kids don't ever learn to say I'm sorry because we never say I'm sorry. But to stop making excuses and pointing blame and just owning that and saying I'm sorry goes a long ways. Along with that, point number 3 on becoming a better person, we've got to learn to forgive. And we've got to learn to forgive others, but we've also got to be willing to forgive ourselves, because what happens is not only are we not willing to say I'm sorry, but we're really not willing to forgive. And when you're not willing to forgive other people, you become bitter towards other people. You become jaded. You become just like you have a really just jaded's probably the best word. A really jaded view on other people and on life. And if you're not willing to forgive yourself, you become maybe even bitter towards your own life situation and your own life circumstances. And once again, you're going to project that off of you because like you don't want to own that. But if we're willing to forgive ourselves, then, we know that we can do better next time. And if we're willing to forgive other people, then we won't become bitter and be nasty, just ugly people, because we won't be holding on to everyone's failures, including our own. Number 5, we have to listen to other people. And that can be a tough one too. But once again, like all these are going to be tough. And if it was easy to become a better person, everyone would be becoming better, but not everyone is becoming better. Most people are kind of stagnant, right? Are you willing to listen to other people to get feedback? Just had a conversation with someone this morning. Like talk to these other people. Ask them how you feel like you could do better and where maybe you've let them down, and be willing to listen to it. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, you got to be careful who you listen to, because everyone's got an opinion and they're not necessarily valid. And I can't tell you how much bad advice I've been given in my life. And I would say God's given me the wisdom not to follow that, but I'm still willing to listen. And I've learned to even say, even when I don't agree with someone, thank you for feeling comfortable enough to share that with me. I appreciate that you are. And that may be followed by, but I don't agree with you, therefore I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to change, but I'm willing to listen. And I want to be approachable so people are willing to share those things with me. And then it's between me and my relationship with God and my own spirit of discernment to figure out whether or not they've got a valid point or not. Number 6, learn humility. We talked about that a lot in Bible class yesterday, that the importance of humility, and humility is like less of us and more of others and more of God. And one of the keys to becoming a better person is that you can't see yourself as being better or more significant than what you really are. You are your biggest barrier in your relationship with other people. You are your biggest barrier in terms of your relationship with God. A humble person can't see past themselves. It's like, or someone that's not humble, a prideful person can't see past themselves. They're too busy admiring themselves in the mirror, and it skews everything that they see and everything that they do, they think everything that they do is more important than what it is, that it's more successful than what it is, and like pride is a huge problem in our world today because we talked about this. We talked about authenticity, and so many people aren't being real with themselves. And if you're not being real with with yourself, that is going to affect your relationship with others, and it's certainly going to affect your relationship with God. So we have to learn humility, and with that, we have to learn to be honest. Right? We see it in politicians, right? No one says, you know what, I'm responsible for that. I screwed that up. No one's willing to say, you know what, I might not be a perfect man or a perfect woman. I might not be a perfect husband or a perfect dad or a perfect wife or a perfect mom. Like no one's going to say that because like we're afraid to be honest. I shared the example that I did a Bible class yesterday that I did a mailer, and the mailer I sent it out, and I'm just trying to be authentic and real because most churches are just trying to blow smoke up everyone's backside, and that absolutely drives me nuts. And so I sent out a mailer that basically said we might not be the biggest, and we might not be the best, but and I don't remember what the tagline was. I did certain things to kind of promote the church. And who was I going for in that ad? I was going for people who want to be real, who want to be honest, who want to be authentic. You know what? There's a gazillion churches in this world. I can guarantee you that we're not the biggest, and I can guarantee you that we're not the best. Doesn't mean that like I don't try to become better as a pastor and as a church, even as I do as a person. Of course we do. But let's be real. Only one person can be the best. And I'm not going to be blowing smoke up your backside trying to make you think it's me. And and if you have a problem with that, then fine. I don't really want you part of the church because I don't want a bunch of dishonest people. I want a bunch of phony people that are pretending to be things that they're not. I want people that are going to be real and honest. Hey, we're all broken people, just trying to become better and make our way through this messy thing that we call life. So number 7 is be honest. Number 8, and I have 10 by the way. Number 8 is be selfless. There's so much selfishness in this world today. People want what's best for them. I run a soccer team, and the place that we had been playing forever, they changed their fields up, and now they're like half the size that they were before. And it's indoor soccer that looks like it should be played on its knees rather than like running around and it's just not. I mean, it's like soccer for. Well, I want to say soccer for midgets, but I can't say that. So soccer for like little people. Let's just say that like the field's small, the goal's small. Like there's nothing good about it. So we've moved one of our teams to this other place, and we're trying to move the other, but the other place doesn't have an opening for our other team yet. And so the place that we're at offered us the first free month to stay there and to do another season, which normally takes about 2.5 months. And I was willing to do that while we wait for the other place to open. But some of the other people on my team are like, well, let's just tell them that we're going to do it. And that's not our problem. If something opens up, we'll take the first free month and then we'll just all, kind of quit and leave it at that. I'm not willing to do that. That's selfish. So someone else that I run the team with, I said, listen, I'm a pastor. I have a good relationship with these people. I'm not going to do something like that because I just think that's disingenuous. Like if they're going to be nice enough to give us the first month free, then let's pay for the next month and maybe the next until the season's over. And then we move. People will always look to their best interests. And you're not a good person when you're selfish. You're just not. So here's something practical you can do. Learn to do things that you don't want to do. And this is, where I get myself into trouble all the time because I share with the congregation and sermons. I do things all the time I do not want to do. Oh, you shouldn't, you shouldn't tell people you don't want to do it. No, I'm being honest. I don't want to do it, but I will do it because it's the right thing to do. And I prefer to be selfless than selfish. Number 9, be patient with others. That's one that I've been trying to grow on over the years. As I seek to become a better person, patience was never one of my greatest gifts. I don't know that it's my greatest gift now, but I'm sure a whole lot better at it now than what I was 20 years ago. And we have to just learn to be patient with other people. Like, people are going to fail. People are going to make mistakes. I'm really not an overly judgmental person because I think I, I've learned that I am broken and I'm sinful and I'm not perfect, and so I can be patient with other people when they're not perfect. I mean, there must be an end to patience at some point. If you're a manager of people, but I totally believe in being patient with them and giving them every opportunity to succeed. Probably there should be an end to patience even when it becomes our own kids. Otherwise, we become enablers and we reinforce dysfunctional behavior, and that's not good for them or us. But I think a lot of us would do well to learn patience. And then the last, number 10, on becoming a better person is you got to learn to love. And you may think you know how to love, but do you really know how to love? And we should love the way that God loves. We should love that the way that the Bible teaches us what love is. And you've heard this passage that I'm going to close the podcast with as we talk about love, and you've heard it at weddings, and honestly, we should read it regularly, because in all relationships, whether it be with spouse or children or other family members or friends or people at church that we interact with or people at the workplace, 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7 tells us what love is. And it says this: love is patient. We just talked about patience. It says love is kind. It doesn't envy. It doesn't boast. It's not proud. We talked about humility. It doesn't dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. I just got done talking about we shouldn't be selfish, right? We should be selfless. It is not easily angered. That was one of ours as well, right? Learn to not be angry. Actually, I think I didn't. Yeah, I put that on my list. I actually can't remember if I actually talked about it or not. I may have skipped that one, but if I did skip it, like we got to stop being angry, and in that is part of what love is. It keeps no record of wrongs. And think about like you and in your relationships. When your spouse does something or your kids do something and you rattle off the fact that they've done that 15 other times in the last 6 months or the last 6 years. Love doesn't keep record of wrongs. It doesn't delight in evil, but it rejoices in truth. It will always protect. It will always trust. It will always hope. It will always persevere. You know what? We tell people we love them all the time, but is that how you love them? If you don't, then you don't really love them. You just have stronger feelings for them than what you have for someone else, because that is what love is. So those are the 10 tips, if you will, on becoming a better person. I would, if we tried to do all 10, we probably won't do any. So I would encourage you to pick out the ones, maybe 2 or 3 that you can especially work on for a while, and try to become better at those. And then maybe you go back to the list and you pick out a couple others, because in the end, I do believe that God calls us to become better people from the day we take our first breath until the day that we take our last breath. Like, if God has given you the cognitive ability to be self-aware and to know what's going on in the world and in your life, then always seek to become a better person. It's never too late. Maybe you stunk as a parent, then be a great grandparent and be a great parent to your adult kids. And when they want to bring up all the stories of all the mistakes that you made, then you just own it. And you say, you know what? By God's grace, I am better today than what I was yesterday. And I'll be better tomorrow than I am today. Thank you for joining me for this episode of God Talk. And I look forward to talking to you next time.